Chapter 8. Winter arrives in Tkam County. Mrs. Radley passes away, but no one seems to pay much attention to the fact that she dies. Scout is frightened by the snow. Since school is declared closed on the account of snow, Scout and Jem decide to visit Miss Mowdy. They borrow the snow from her front yard and build a snowman, which resembles her other neighbor, Mr. Avery. In the night, Scout is woken up from her sleep and is informed that Miss Mowdy's house has caught fire. Atticus orders the children to stay near the Radley house while the fire is being put out. Later, they discover that a wool blanket has been put over Scout's shoulders since it was so cold. How it has come there is a mystery to both Scout and Jem. But when Atticus tells Scout it might have been Boo, Scout is terrified. The fire at Miss Mowdy's place creates quite a stir, but Scout's close encounter with Boo, even without her realization of it, causes more topic for conversation. Boo's care for the children is noted when he places the blanket on Scout's shoulders. It is obvious that Boo has done it, since Nathan Radley had been near Miss Mowdy's house, helping to put the fire out. Though her entire house is burned to the ground, Miss Mowdy is still not disturbed and has recovered her sharp sense of humor. Her plans of setting up a new house, large enough to room her flowers, portrays her as a practical and worldly woman. Chapter 9. Scout is pushed into a fight with her classmate, who made a comment that her father was defending an N-word. Scout questions Atticus. Atticus states that he is indeed defending a black man, and his name is Tom Robinson. He explains that though the case is tricky and complex, it's important for his conscience. He deems it important due to the injustice his community faces. Another reason for taking the case is that if he did not, he would not be able to represent their county in the legislature. Besides, the case is equally as important to him to be able to stand up to his anti-racial stance. Christmas arrives with mixed feelings for Jem and Scout, since they have to spend it at Finch's Landing with Aunt Alexandra, Atticus's sister. They receive air rifles as Christmas gifts from Atticus. Getting acquainted with the relatives once again seems so tiring to Scout, and she finds her cousin Francis a terrible bore. Aunt Alexandra is outraged that Scout is still wearing overalls and not wearing a dress. Scout and Francis have a fight, first over Dill and then over Atticus, whom Francis calls an N-lover. Uncle Jack mediates between them, but Uncle Jack is unable to comprehend Scout's way of thinking and admits to Atticus how he himself is better off for not having married at all. Scout cannot help picking a fight when Francis speaks badly about her father. Uncle Jack has a talk with Atticus about children, and Atticus, knowing that Scout is listening, says that he hopes the children would trust him and come to him for answers instead of depending on local gossip. Scout is surprised that her father knows she has been listening, and she states, "And it was not until many years later that I realized he wanted me to hear every word he said." Atticus again displays his rich character through his sense of child psychology. He realizes, as few adults, that sometimes children do not like being told what to do. So he speaks practically, knowing that Scout is listening. He wants her to hear that he hopes that his children would not be like the rest of the other citizens in Tkam, who refuse to associate with the blacks. Chapter 10. Atticus refuses to teach the children how to shoot their air rifles, and Uncle Jack takes up the charge of giving them the lessons. Atticus only tells them that they may shoot at anything but a mockingbird. He explains that mockingbirds hurt no one. They only sing for people to enjoy, so killing a mockingbird is definitely a sin. While going for a walk across to the Radley house, they notice Tim, their neighbor's dog, behaving strangely. The children rush home to inform Calpurnia. It turns out that the dog has turned mad, which means that it has rabies, and Calpurnia rushes around informing everyone about it. The sheriff, Mr. Hectate, requests Atticus to shoot down the dog. Atticus kills the dog in one shot. The children, who had never been aware of their father's shooting skills, are truly stunned. It turns out that their father's nickname in his younger days was Ol' One-Shot. Miss Mowdy then explains to the children that though Atticus was such a fine shooter, he had decided long ago that he would only shoot when it was absolutely necessary to do so. The mockingbird is mentioned for the first time. Atticus insists that a mockingbird whose sole ambition in life is to bring pleasure to others should never be killed, it being a virtual sin to do so. The reference to the mockingbird is important for Tom Robinson's trial, as well as relationship to Boo Radley. Atticus's excellence in shooting greatly astonishes the children who have never seen their father shoot at anything. The children's respect for their father is raised several notches now. Jem, especially who is at the stage of emulating his father, is very proud of him, which is demonstrated when Jem says happily, "Atticus is a gentleman, just like me." Chapter 11. Jem and Scout have outgrown the practice of bothering Boo. They now encounter Mrs. Dubose, an old woman with a hateful gaze and a vile tongue, who never fails to yell abuses at Jem and Scout, as well as Atticus and the entire Finch family. One day, in Jem's anger, he goes over to Mrs. Dubose's house and cuts down the tops of every flower bush owned by Mrs. Dubose. Atticus, of course, makes Jem go back and apologize to her. As a punishment, Jem is ordered to go to Mrs. Dubose's house and read to her for a month. Every day he would read out till the alarm clock set beside the bed would ring, signaling the time for him to go home. A month later, the reading stops. Some days later, Atticus informs them that Mrs. Dubose has died, leaving a box containing a wax-perfect camellia, which is a flower, for Jem. Later on, Jem is told that the reading session had been conducted only as a distraction for her to overcome her morphine addiction. Mrs. Dubose had died a free woman, which means she was not addicted to anything. Jem and Scout have grown up, but they still cannot overcome their anger if anyone passes a comment about their father. Mrs. Dubose comes across to the children as a terrible woman who can only say harsh things about others. Yet Atticus insists that the children respect her because of her age. The evenings in her house reading to Mrs. Dubose is a hard task for the children, but the essential reason for it is revealed only after her death. Her desire to get rid of her morphine addiction before her death reveals her as a strong character who would rather go through a grueling experience to break the habit of an addiction than to die as an addict. Her gift of the camellia flower shows that she understood Jem's anger when he had cut off her camellia bushes. Presenting him with the same flower is her way of letting him know that she understands his feelings and acknowledges the same. Atticus emphasizes the fact that whatever Mrs. Dubose went through revealed courage. He states, "It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through, no matter what." The children learn a great deal about strength of character and grit through their experience with Mrs. Dubose. We have now entered into Part 2 of To Kill a Mockingbird. Chapter 12. Jem shows the typical signs of growing up, with inconsistent moods and a short temper. Scout is advised to leave him alone. When Atticus leaves for town for some official work, Calpurnia takes the children for service at her church. Remember that this is during the time where the Jim Crow laws were enforced, so the churches were segregated. Scout is amazed, especially at the lack of hymn books. She is later told that most of the people who attend Calpurnia's church are uneducated except for a few, including Calpurnia. The children realize that's the somewhat dual life that Calpurnia has to lead. The preacher, Reverend Sykes, asks the people to donate money for Tom Robinson's wife and children. Jem and Scout donate from their own pockets. On returning home, they are disappointed to see their Aunt Alexandra on their front porch. The suffering that Jem undergoes through the process of maturing is not fully comprehended by Scout, who misses his company as well as Dill's. The children's time at Calpurnia's church serves as an eye-opener for them. They suddenly realize how inherently different they are from the blacks in their town. But the heartfelt welcome given by the rest of the members speaks a lot about the basic generous nature of the black community. Besides, the children also notice the general wish to help out Tom Robinson and his family. The reason behind Tom's arrest is revealed, that he apparently raped Bob Yule's daughter. The reader notices how well Calpurnia has adjusted herself to the way of life of Atticus's family, having learned to read and even speak like white folks. At the same time, she hasn't forgotten her origins and attends the services with her kin of their own church. Chapter 13. Aunt Alexandra makes her presence from the first day she arrives. Atticus returns home that same day. Aunt Alexandra settles down in the house. Aunt Alexandra attempts to instill her sense of etiquette into the children, which doesn't always work. Atticus has to speak to the children about it. Atticus seems stern and gruff to the children, who cannot understand this sudden change in his behavior. But finally, even he relents and allows the children not to take everything Aunt Alexandra says too seriously. Aunt Alexandra's presence in the family is not immediately comforting, since a lot of adjustments are required. The children, who have never been used to such a rigid upbringing, find themselves at a loss. Atticus has probably been pressured by his sister to let her stay in the house. Alexandra's basic reasoning of things is right, but having no children of her own, she is not able to comprehend their true nature. And so, many uncomfortable situations arise. It is Atticus's practical and non-conforming nature that lets the children believe that things are not as bad as they may seem.